Hey, it's your old pal Lucid Stu again, and in this video we're going to take a look at my trip to Death Valley National Park after I went out to Las Vegas to get some Brightline West footage last November. So I started out real early in the morning and decided to take a drive down Las Vegas Boulevard. And the interesting thing about going to Las Vegas around Thanksgiving now is that they have the Formula One race around that time. So even if you're not there during the race, you get to see the place set up for it, or you get to see them tearing it down. In this case, the race had not occurred yet, so they were still setting up the track. The year before I went out there, was after the race and they were tearing it down, so I got to see both versions. This one was a little cooler because they have all the lights set up for the race, and you could kind of imagine yourself driving down the boulevard in the race, so it was kind of cool. The reason to head out early was I wanted to get out to Sloan to take some video of the vehicle maintenance facility. And in order to squeeze that in and actually get out to Death Valley with any amount of time to see anything, I was going to need to leave really early. On the way, I went by the Brightline West station site just to get some extra footage, and that included this passing shot on the freeway. At Sloan, I had an unexpected sight. There were all these people working there and starting to set up fencing, and I just happened to get there right when they showed up, and so everything turned out great as far as Sloan goes. I did not get any drone footage at this particular time because it wasn't really necessary. After that, I headed out to Death Valley National Park from Las Vegas. You have to go over the hills here, and then through Pahrump. This was the first time I've seen this area after a thunderstorm, so it was really cool to see it this way. What was my reason for going out to Death Valley after Las Vegas? I had been to Death Valley before this, but what made this unique was that my Las Vegas trip just happened to coincide with a very strong set of thunderstorms that blew through Southern California and Southern Nevada the day before. And by my reckoning, in addition to other rainfall that had happened previously that winter in the Death Valley area, I figured this was my best chance of seeing water on the ground in Death Valley. So that started out on the way to Pahrump rather auspiciously with this rainbow here. It was actually a partial double rainbow, didn't really show up in the videography too well here. This is the roadway that leads to the park from the east, and this goes through, what is it, Amargosa Junction? Maybe it's Death Valley Junction. And this gives you an example of what happens in the desert when you get a little bit too much rainfall for the barely there watercourses to handle it. It doesn't rain often enough out there, and there aren't enough people out there to warrant building bridges. So when it rains a lot, the normally dry creeks just run over the roadway. And you have to be careful. There's a lot of people still driving really fast out there, and if you hit one of these creeks going 50 miles an hour, you're going to be in trouble. This is Death Valley Junction. You've got the Amargosa Opera House out there. Look that up if you're interested in a little odd history. And then this is the road into Death Valley, and you can see on the right hand side those storms were still coming through. But just the way that it worked out was that they were only dumping precipitation when they hit the mountains, so it was still a pretty dry day in the valley itself. and not really enough water was falling in areas like this in order to power the creeks through the park. Most of the water that had flowed into the valley was already there. Like, this was not a continuous flow. The flow from the previous storms and the day before was done. That was it, and they were starting to clean up. And here we are at the park entrance. I was going to stop real quick to get the obligatory shot in front of the entrance sign, but this other person beat me to it. But no big deal. We still have the shot here to talk about it. Death Valley is a very interesting national park. It is unlike any of the others in the sense that it is very much a desert park, but it is as large as some of the largest parks in Alaska. So not only is it almost totally dry area and just this vast desert, but it's enormous. Just to give you a sense of scale, Death Valley is over 3 million acres, and that makes it about the size of the state of Connecticut. So here we are a little bit further into the park. This is coming up to the parking lot for Zabriskie Point. Coming in from the east at this particular entrance, Zabriskie Point is one of the first quote-unquote attractions that you come to in the park. And just to give you an idea of how large Death Valley is, it is 10 miles from the entrance on this road to Zabriskie Point. And this is one of the first things that you come to that is marked as a thing to see. So what's so great about Zabriskie Point? It's really just an easily accessible elevated area that gives you a nice view over a part of the park. And the reason I say a part is because the place is so huge, it's pretty much impossible to see it all from one vantage point. So I grabbed the GoPro and put it on my handheld gimbal, and we headed up the trail here, and you're going to go up there with me. I'm going to speed this up a little bit because it's a fairly tedious hike up there. You can see this is paved. I think technically this is wheelchair accessible. It would not be easy to push someone up this ramp on a wheelchair, but I think it's technically wheelchair accessible. Some places in national parks are like this. One that I can think of offhand is Bridalveil Fall in Yosemite. And actually, quite a bit of Yosemite Valley is wheelchair accessible. So I think that's really cool. That you can. This is really what is one amazing thing about infrastructure in America is that pretty much no matter where you go, there's a road, and sometimes you could be someplace this remote and you could take a road somewhere and get out of the car with someone who can't walk very well and still go see something really spectacular. And I think that's really cool. You can see this person ahead of me right here is walking up there with a cane, and they're making it. So that's awesome in my opinion. Obviously, you can't do this with every attraction in a national park, but that there are some is really good. And we're getting up to the top here, and you're starting to be able to see things. So in addition to just being able to see a huge part of the park, the formations right around this viewpoint are really interesting. And then in addition to that, just all this interaction with the cloud is something that you would not normally see in Death Valley. I would say 99% of the time that you show up, otherwise, it's going to be cloudless, dry, and hot as hell. The other time that I had been in the park was slightly off season, and it was something like 105 degrees. That's not super hot for me because I live in inland Southern California, and it's pretty normal for temperatures to get up between 100 and 110 Fahrenheit here during the summer. So no big deal. Just like Australia and the outback, when I went on vacation in Australia with my dad and my brother in 2016, we went to the Red Center to see Uluru and Katajita. Everyone that we talked to about it in Sydney and Melbourne remarked that it was really hot out there, but here's the ironic part. It was actually hotter at home here when we left than it was in the middle of Australia, and that was in November, which is right before the hot part for them. So after Zabriskie Point, I headed to the main part of the valley, and this was kind of disappointing because I was hoping that water was still running on the surface, and technically it was, but most of the action had taken place the day before and was done at this point. The road crews had gotten to work really quickly and had cleared off most of the road. You can see, though, where the creek had washed over the roadway in several places the day before, or perhaps in one of the previous storms. In just a couple of places here, there actually was water on the surface still, which was really cool to see. This was like right here. That was the main thing for me. Like, it kind of as wacky as it sounds, is I just wanted to go out to Death Valley and see if I could catch water on the surface. And you have to keep in mind, this is a place that gets up to 130 degrees pretty much every summer. And so to see water on the ground here is not usual. It's not like it never happens, but you really have to be there at a specific time of year, and probably in a good year on top of that. So I considered myself very fortunate. Coming up to the road that goes to Badwater, which is the lowest point in North America, you can see water on the surface right there, right out by the hills and the mountains. So since Badwater is the low point, that would be where the most water would have accumulated, and that's where I wanted to go. But unfortunately, the road washed out, and they hadn't had enough time to repair it. So the road was closed right here, and there was no way to get to it. If you go look around at other videos, there are videos that people have put up where there's enough water out at the Badwater area where you can actually go kayak out onto the lake. So Death Valley has a fascinating history. Way back in the day, during the last glaciation, when the glacial sheets changed the weather in the area, there was a lot more precipitation. My understanding of it is that really the climate was not too much different, right? It was still hotter than hell out there, but there was a lot more precipitation, and it was enough to overwhelm the evaporation that keeps water from accumulating for long periods of time here now. And what happened was all of this water came in from the south, originating at the San Bernardino Mountains and other mountain ranges in the desert up there, and it made its way all the way to Death Valley here, which at the time was underwater as a giant lake called Lake Manly. And so, as incredible as that is to believe, with this place being one of the hottest places on Earth, all of this at one time was underwater. And there is very clear geological evidence of this. So in that regard, it's fascinating to think about how wildly the weather on our planet changes over time. And that an area that used to be a lake is now a place that you go to hope to see water on the surface in a rare instance. And if you're lucky, it happens. So the area that we're going through right now is the main resort part of Death Valley, where the visitor center is and all of the amenities are, and you can stay there and rent places and all that. Like I said, the place itself is vast. You could drive about 50 or 60 miles and only see about half of it. So very much so, this is a park that needs a major base of operations, because everywhere else you're going in the park, you're going to need to drive to quite a long ways as well. Not too far away from there is a little setup that they have where they show you like all about the borax mining that happened out here. And so out on this dusty, lonely road, we're gonna check out some places where water is actually on the ground. Hey, there's a little bit right there. For the most part in the park, the Park Service had managed to clear the roads pretty well. There's still quite a bit of dust in the places, you know, the low spots and the places where creeks were crossing the road and things like that. It seemed like it would only take about a week for that stuff to clear out. So all traces of it raining are probably gone within a few weeks most of the time. And here's your friendly neighborhood road plow. So I didn't have a whole lot of time in the park, so I headed for Mesquite Flat Dunes. And this is a dune field out in the middle of the park by the Stovepipe Wells area. It's just a fun place to go visit that you can get to pretty quickly from Furnace Creek. One of the more remote destinations in the park is Scotty's Castle, which I have visited previously. The road out there was closed on this day. Just to give you an idea of the distances involved, Scotty's Castle is about 50 miles from these dunes. On the way to the dunes, I crossed I guess it would be like the main creek through the valley, which of course would normally be dry. It was not on this particular day, so that was pretty cool. I actually got to drive through a flowing creek in Death Valley, which I did not think I would ever do. So here we are pulling into the parking lot for the dunes. The dunes out here in Death Valley are pretty cool. I have been to much larger Kelso Dunes out by Kelso in Mojave National Preserve or Reserve or whatever it's called. And I've also been to Great Sand Dunes National Park, which is in Colorado or New Mexico or wherever. But these ones are pretty fun. On top of that, very odd to be walking around on sand dunes in Death Valley and not be hot. I think on this particular day, it was something like 65 degrees, which I have to believe is not common there at all during daylight hours. And of course, thanks to the passing storm, The whole thing was punctuated by a ridiculously beautiful backdrop. So this was not my first trip to these dunes. Like I said, I've been to Death Valley before, but exploring them again was really fun on this particular day. So with that, I headed back out of the park, same way I came in. I really did not have a huge objective as far as visiting the park goes. I really just wanted to see it in this state with water on the ground, which is something that I never thought I would see. I did want to go to Badwater because, like I said, that's the low point, and that's where the most water is going to collect. But that's okay. It's okay that the road was closed. The main objective of the trip was fulfilled. And I don't know if I'll ever go back to Death Valley. It's not that far away, but there are so many other places to see and things to do. I just don't know if I'm going to get back out there again. And I seriously doubt I'm ever going to see it again under these types of circumstances. That is also very difficult to plan for. So the one unfortunate thing about that is if you try to plan a trip like this, it's almost impossible. You really have to know what's going to happen a few days ahead of time and then just head out there like I did. Otherwise, it's just not going to happen because it's too hot out there and the water just evaporates right away. The only exception is if you get like a really, really wet winter and you're in the kind of conditions that you see in those YouTube kayaking videos. And then on the way back out, I passed the inn at Death Valley or inn at Furnace Creek or whatever it's called. Who cares? This place was built in the 1920s. So, people have had the idea of coming out here on vacation, the wacky idea of coming out here on vacation for a long, long time. Heat tourism. This is actually a pretty good spot to come visit in the winter, especially if you live in colder climates, because the odds that you're going to have a day under 60 degrees are almost non-existent. And then here's one more shot of the storm activity rolling through, going out of the park. And once again, just really amazing to see any precipitation at all coming down at a place that averages something like 2 inches of rain a year. Just a real privilege to be alive in this spot while something like this was happening. And I'm glad I went out there, and I'm glad I got the chance to see it. And that's what I think, in my opinion, that's what tourism is all about. Being in the right place in the right time to experience something that moves you. Now, outside of the park, and just a reminder, if you attempt to do anything like this, be very careful around the roadways. This person passing me at 60 miles an hour probably hit that water going pretty fast and is lucky that they didn't hydroplane and die. And with that, I will be heading back to Southern California. I should tell this story real quick. So on the way back, about an hour south of here, a very swollen creek had washed completely across the road, and California Highway Patrol was out there and had closed the road at the creek. It was not a large amount of water, but it was enough water that you should definitely be hesitant about crossing it. And I got to the front of the line by that creek, and right in front of me, a guy in a 4x4 truck decided to drive across the water and made it no problem. And so I got up there and I talked to the CHP guy, and he told me the situation, and he says something like, you know, like I don't think your car would make it. And I said, I give it a shot. So I went for it, and what I didn't realize was that it wasn't just a bunch of water all over the road. The creek had washed a bunch of rocks and other sediment over there, and there were some pretty big rocks, and I hit those right in the middle of the water. And luckily I had the presence of mind to not slow down or stop. Hit the gas instead and powered through that. But that decision was very nearly fateful. And so I would remind everyone to turn around, turn around and don't drown. Do what Stu says, not what Stu do. So anyway, after that, I headed home and procrastinated making this video for you for about 7 months. But there it is. I hope you enjoyed watching it. And if you ever get out in the area, go check out Death Valley National Park because it's well worth it. Until next time, I'll see you on that big, beautiful freeway.